Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to my office. My name is Rolf Schaller. I'm the Chief of Mobility and Staffing at UNICEF, and I'm very pleased to be with you today and to be able to give you a short oversight of UNICEF's activities out in the field and in the different headquarter locations. And after that short presentation, well, I'll be ready for question and answer, and I would actually spend most of the time answering to your questions. So I'm looking forward to a lively interaction, hopefully. And well, start off with some information, general information on UNICEF and its activities. By the way, you have seen maybe on the booth we have a long presentation, relatively long, which gives you much more details than I will present now to you. There is also there are two videos which are very lively interpretation of and illustration of what it is like to work for UNICEF. So I won't pretend to be as exhaustive nor as lively as these presentations, but just give you a short overview. So as you know, UNICEF is the organization which advocates for the well-being and the protection of children. It has been founded in 1946, so a very long tradition already. We have over 11,000 staff across some 180 offices, really global activity, global presence. We have a budget which is very important, $4 billion with all the donations and fundings that we need to raise every year after year. We do not have, it's entirely voluntary funded organization. So a lot of our work also goes into fundraising, and obviously we need to monitor and evaluate what we do very carefully to report back to our donors. Also, a particular feature of UNICEF is that we work both in development context, but increasingly also in context of middle-income countries or graduating countries, and then also in emergencies and in low-income countries. So our span of activities is really very wide. When it comes to emergencies, it is a very particular setting of in which we have to operate, and as in all the contexts, UNICEF is always working in partnership with other organizations and with partnerships also with civil society. So a lot of emphasis is on partnering with different actors in these different contexts. And when there is an emergency, UNICEF has also the responsibility for in certain areas to be cluster leader. And if we get to the different program areas where UNICEF works, I would like to highlight the 5 major focus areas in our program activities. To start with the young child survival and development, where the focus of our activities is really to decrease the child mortality in this early stage. And obviously there are the Millennium development goals. We are working towards those together with all the other agencies and humanitarian development actors. It is an important area, and there has been quite a lot of progress achieved in that area. A second focus area is ensuring basic education for all children, regardless of their gender, regardless of their social status. basic education for everyone. So we have a lot of activities in that area. It is mainly also working with our partners and the local government to ensure that the educational system is in place and is well functioning. And when there is an emergency, when there is crisis, we are equipped to help set up mobile schools and intervene in such difficult circumstances to help to give the children the continued education they need. A third focal area is child protection. This is all to do with the legal framework around the minimum rights of children, and to go beyond that and ensure that children are really protected against any kind of abuse. That can be from child labor to child trafficking. Different governments need to have in place functioning systems which ensure this protection. A lot of work goes into that area as well. Fourth area is to fight against HIV/AIDS transmission. This can start early on with the birth of a child, but then continues. So this is an area where we have a lead role to play together with WHO. And then we have a fifth area, which is a little bit more general, and that is around policy and advocacy, where we work together with the partners and with the government mainly to help them setting up all the systems that are needed to work towards a better world for children where their rights are protected. All these programmatic areas are supported by support functions. In there we find fundraising, we find things like IT technology, we find human resources, we have research function, we have a research center which is based in Florence around the latest law and with the latest research in these various areas. So we have a variety of support functions to help these programmatic areas to achieve the best possible results for the children around the world. So these are a few points that I wanted to highlight in the beginning. If I add maybe one point, and that is regarding the profiles we are looking for. As you can see, UNICEF is working as in highly specialized areas. So obviously the profiles we are looking for are always, or most of the time, very specialized profiles. Also, we are most of the time looking for people who have already a certain experience. I know this might be frustrating for young graduates, people who graduate out of their studies, who need to look for their first experience. We do have internship programs, we do have some programs which help young people to get experience. However, most of the opportunities and the fixed term where we contract staff is really aimed at people who have 3, 5, 8 years of experience. These are mostly the minimum requirements in our vacancy announcements around work experience. We also look for people with an advanced university degree most of the time. This is the standard requirement in our activities, and we do have different type of categories of staff. Maybe also to highlight, we do have the international staff, which is subject to being placed in different countries and need to have a mobility to go in wherever their skills are required. Then we do have national staff, which is divided maybe in two categories. The national offices, which are highly specialized, but they are not expected to move from their country. They are nationals of their country that deploy their expertise and competencies in their country. And we have the general service staff, which is more on the administrative side, and is usually also of the nationality of the country where we work, but not necessarily. It can also be of another nationality, but that's not, this staff is not expected to move from one country to another on mission. So these are a few highlights, and I see that there are already some questions coming in, and I think without any further ado, I would like to open up the session now to the questions and answer to your questions, and have this as an interactive moment with you. So bear with me while I go through some of the questions. So there is a question around how long I will be able to answer questions. So it is scheduled up to for another 40 minutes or so. If there are lots of questions, I'm happy to extend a little bit, but I will not be online the whole afternoon or evening. So okay, so there's one question around how important is it to have working knowledge of more than one UN language? I would say it is very important. We are looking for people with at least two languages, UN languages, and this is for the international category mainly. We do expect everyone to speak English, as this is the lingua franca within the organization. Our communications internally are mostly in English, so it is important also for our national staff to understand English and understand these communications. But then for the international staff who is traveling and who is assigned to different contexts and countries, it's obviously very important to have also other UN languages. I think we recently have experienced difficulties in having enough staff with, for instance, French language skills and Arabic language skills. This was highlighted in emergencies in Haiti 3 years back, but currently also for the Arabic skills in everything around the Arab Spring, the Syria crisis. So it is really important to have these two languages, minimum of 2 languages. Any additional language is obviously an advantage as well. So maybe an interesting question, what can be a differentiation in terms of skills for a job? What can make me shine among so many? Good question, because this is really a very important step when you do find a job that you want to apply for. Well, you need to present yourself in a way on paper that makes you stand out, and that is difficult, that is challenging. I would say it actually starts before you find that job and before you get to the point where you write your application and fill in the form. I would place the initial stage at when you are prospecting, when you are looking at different opportunities, when we are looking at, well, what is my interest, what are my skill sets, and what is, for instance, UNICEF looking for. Check the vacancy announcement regularly, even before maybe you are ready to go for a job. But when you are thinking about applying, maybe at some point, start looking at these vacancy announcements. Start looking at, well, which area, where do my competencies fit best, and then you will start noticing that there are differences in these vacancy announcements. You will start realizing, oh, this is a vacancy announcement for Liberia, and here they are looking for this kind of competency. This is a vacancy for New York. Well, there are differences. Obviously, they have a different operational setting, and they are requiring more of this or more of that. You will get a feel. You will know. You will start to, if you're curious enough, you will start to understand what are the competencies that this particular hiring manager is looking for. I must tell you here maybe as well that in UNICEF the hiring process is partly decentralized. There is a central screening when the applications come in, but after that the initial shortlist goes out to the hiring unit, and the hiring unit with the hiring managers, they go through these applications and apply their criteria, which usually are in the vacancy announcement as well. So that's where it is important to study these vacancy announcements before and to kind of detect, oh, what is special in this vacancy announcement? Because they might seem all very similar, but there are differences. So you need to find those differences out. And to get back to your question, how can I make my application stand out, is if you detect these differences, if you find out, well, what is the hiring manager looking for, you can present your application more targeting these skills, that highlight these skills that would fulfill these expectations. You kind of need to put yourself into the shoes of the recruiter or the hiring manager and show that you understand the context, you understand what this unit is looking for, and you then present your competencies and your skills with all you have. It is a difficult process. It's not easy, as you probably all know. You are competing against the rest of the world. There is a lot of, we received a lot of applications. To give a figure, last year we had 80,000 applications for some 500 and something positions, IP, meaning international positions, international professional positions. So you can see how many applications come in. Obviously, some of them did not match at all profiles and were screened out at the early stage. But then it leaves still many good applications per position. So the competition is very high, and the question that you raised is very relevant. How can you make your application stand out? Also, I would like to highlight one point there. When we say, well, minimum years of experience, it is really minimum. You must expect that for a position where we say minimum years of experience 5 years, we have a large number of people who come in with maybe 10 years or even more experience for these positions. It's not necessarily the years that count, but usually what goes with the years is also the experience, and hence often there is a correlation with the strength of a application. So let me get to some other, because there are a number coming in, and it's not easy to keep track. Let me just give me a second here. Okay, follow-up question on that. Would graduate study experience, such as research during PhD program, qualify as work experience? It depends. It can count. It depends really on the area where you are applying and the position. It can be very relevant. It depends maybe also on the research that you do. It can be very relevant, just as it cannot be that relevant to that working area. So we look at it, and we decide when we look at it. If there is no generic yes or no, but yes, we definitely look at it. Whether it then counts or not, that depends on your research experience and the position. Oh, there's a very specific one which I'm afraid I might not be able to answer in the full extent. The question is around gender mainstreaming and gender equality, and what are the specific skills we are looking for in that area. And this is what would be the key competencies from UNICEF perspective to deliver in this area? So gender mainstreaming. I know we have had several positions in that area related to education, making sure that we can advise government on how to put in place educational systems which are gender neutral, which allow for all girls and boys to attend the school and to get the basic education. So the key competencies in there, which we were looking for, was experience in designing policies around education, experience in national educational programs, obviously with a focus on gender mainstreaming in there. So it's a combination of maybe research into gender mainstreaming and then practical application. There might be other areas. There might be areas more in the health sector where we also would have to have some specialized knowledge on how to make sure that the programs are not gender biased and that it is the protection in that area is for girls and boys, which would maybe require more expertise in the medical area with an angle of gender mainstreaming. So it is in general a combination between a programmatic area and then knowledge about gender mainstreaming. See, there are a lot of questions coming in. Okay. Our recent graduates, no longer registered students eligible to apply for internships in UNICEF. Unfortunately, my answer here is no. Our internships are limited to applicants which are still in the program, either a graduate or a master's program, or can do PhD program as well. How important in the selection process is the written test? Okay, because I know that other organizations prefer to have oral interview to technical test. I'm sorry, my text here continues to scroll down automatically, so I lose track of the questions. The written test can be very important. I would say that it becomes increasingly important, but we do see that as really a technical test where we want to make sure that you have the requirements, or that the people that pass that test and go to the next step, which is the interview, that they have the knowledge, technical knowledge that we need for that particular position. So it is really an important step, and we want to test that technical knowledge up front so that we don't have to spend too much time during the oral interview. Because usually, and I think that was described by my colleague Michael Emery yesterday in his presentation, the interview is a short moment. It's maybe an hour, and you have 1 hour for a competency-based interview. So whenever we can, we would want to test the technical side up front through a written test, so that we don't have to spend too much time. It might still be questions around technical skills in the interview, but the main focus during the interview will be the other type of competencies we are looking for in this position. So how does your work link with the Millennium Development Goals? Very much so. All our planning is actually, most of our planning is oriented towards achieving the Millennium Development Goals. So we are part of the UN system, we are part of this overall framework where we work towards the achievement of the Millennium Development Goals. So all our activities are formulated in a way that we achieve these Millennium Development Goals. Our planning is result-based, so we define the results that we want to achieve, and these results are linked to the Millennium Development Goals. And working backwards from these results, we see what we need to get to these results. This result-based planning is an ongoing process, which is either on a 2-year cycle or a 4-year cycle that we establish these programs, and they get approved by our board, and they become binding guidelines for our programming, and whatever we do, they need to link into that. Okay, there is a second part to that question, which is must I have experience in UN-related agencies only to fit your skills and requirements? No. It can be an advantage, that's sure, but not necessarily. We have many people that start out with UNICEF and it's their first position in the UN system. So that is not unusual. really depends on the position, it depends on the vacancy, what is described there, what are the requirements. There might be positions where it is useful to have previous experience in the UN, or even required, but by far not all of our positions require that. So there's a specific question about someone who is a photographer and would like to work for UNICEF, and maybe we do not have professional photographers as a fixed-term position, and more as either short-term assignments or consultants. So I would advise you check also on our internet, the section of short-term assignments or consultancies. So if we have something that might come up there. Sorry for that. So here's a question: how would I tune my key skills to? I lost it here. Several questions. Just read them and capture them together. Okay, some of it is so on highlighting the key skills. The question here: does age of the applicant play any role in the application process? It would seem that there are not too many opportunities for young people to compete with more experienced senior staff. Yes, this is correct. In UNICEF, the majority of our positions that go out are requiring 5 to 8 years of experience, which is not necessarily, well, it doesn't address the people that come straight off graduation. It means it's rather people with probably they are in their 30s or close to that. This is the situation in UNICEF where we are really looking for expertise, and we do not have that many positions that allow younger people to enter. But we do have, but it's just not that many. So you have to be patient and look for them when they pop up. There are also other opportunities that I would like to highlight here for younger people to start, and they are either through you are a national of a country which does sponsor JPO Junior Professional Program, This is one opportunity. There are also governments that sponsor JPOs for other country nationals from developing countries or from the south. There is a program also with the UN volunteers. UN volunteers offers equally possibilities to start as an intern. However, these internships are paid, and that is an interesting opportunity. UNICEF has quite a number of UN volunteers around the world, and this allows you to get experience at a level that is maybe at the level entry level qualifications required. So these are some of the possibilities to gain experience and to enter into UNICEF as well. Obviously, they are limited in time, both JPO and UNV, the UN Volunteer Program. They are 1, 2, maybe 3-year programs for JPO, some JPOs. But this gives you a head start and gives you some experience and exposure internally. To what extent the title of previous job matters in a resume? Well, difficult to say. I think the title, it's more what you describe you have done than the title. If the title is, if you feel that the title you had in your previous job does not at all correspond with what you have actually been doing, well, I would not mention the title and rather put the description of what you have been doing. But in any case, in our screening process, it is not done with a machine. It is done by people sitting here, going through these resumes and reading actually what is written there. So one advice that I would like to give you is, don't describe your activity in like 10 lines, because the recruiter who is reading this might get lost in these 10 lines. Be short, concise, but highlight the key factors. And that's where I get back to what I said earlier. It is important that you have carefully studied the position that you are applying to, because then you know what you want to highlight in there. You have an idea of what is actually the hiring manager, what is UNICEF looking for in this position, and you highlight that more particularly in that section. For midterm career professionals, how valuable is for UNICEF experience in the private sector, academic, research, and humanitarian areas? Well, again, depending on the position, this can be crucial, most looked for, or a little bit less looked for. I can give you examples. We have a supply division for it. It's based in Copenhagen, but there are supply officers and logistics officers around the world. They help our supply and our provisions in various areas. But for instance, UNICEF is the world's biggest provider in vaccines. So to ship vaccines can be very delicate, because some of it needs a cold chain. It's a highly complex and complicated process to ensure that these vaccines arrive in the middle of nowhere and in perfect conditions. Often we are looking for specialists coming from the private sector, or not necessarily private sector, but people who have gained experience, top-of-the-notch experience in that area, and often it comes out of private sector. We have other areas like that. Often in the support function. When it comes to the more programmatic area, academia can be most helpful. We have, as I mentioned earlier in my introduction, we do have a research center. We do a lot of research. UNICEF is the leading agency in all these questions around the promotion and protection of child rights. We need to have people who are top of the notch, who have been in activities, in organizations, in academia, searching and looking for these best practices and have that specific knowledge. So it plays an important role. How important? That again depends on the position, on the setting of where we are looking for that person to work in. So the weight of it can differ from one position to another. Okay, I just saw one. Does UNICEF have a roster selection? Yes, we do have. In some areas, we don't actually call it roster, but we call it talent groups. And every now and then, if you follow our vacancy announcements, you will find a vacancy announcement for a talent group with no specific location. So this is an attempt that we have started about 2.5 years ago in introducing these talent groups and generic vacancies. So there are generic vacancies for these talent groups. You go through a process and you get assessed on your competencies for, let's say, can be a talent group in water and sanitation, so for wash officers. And we would put out different levels for P3, P4, P5, and you get assessed, tested and assessed against the requirements for these levels. There will be also an interview with a panel, and if you are successful, you will be included into the talent group. This talent group then serves as staffing the upcoming positions through a direct selection process, which can still involve some interview, but the process is much lighter. You would usually not be tested technically anymore because you have been tested before, and the process is also much faster. So a direct selection can take maybe as little as 2-3 weeks, while a normal regular recruitment process with the vacancy announcement, the pre-selection, the selection, and so on, would take 4 months. So there are, we do have these talent groups in place, but we function with both, with talent groups and specific vacancy announcements, depending on the situation. Okay, there is a question also, in addition to internships, what other possibilities are there? Well, I think I mentioned that the UN Volunteer Program, JPO Program. We do have a program which is geared towards young professionals, which is called the NETI Program. We will, in there we are looking for young professionals with maybe 3 to 5 years of experience, depending on the position. we will go out with these positions probably in July rather. We have been running this program now for 4 years or 5 years almost. So it is a highly competitive process as well to get into that program. But this is geared towards the more younger people in their career, meaning 3 to 5 years of work experience still. And regarding internship and volunteering, is there a realistic chance for entering into UNICEF? We do have quite a number of internships and volunteers working for us. Now, this is no guarantee at all that you will then become a UNICEF staff member later on, but it gives you exposure to the activities, it gives you an experience, and, well, helps you as well, maybe securing a post somewhere else. For us, the internship program is not necessarily geared towards recruiting these interns then into UNICEF, because we know that our requirements that we have are requirements where we are looking for more mid-term, mid-career professionals. But through the internship program, we also want to give younger people the opportunity to get some experience and some exposure, which might eventually, a few years down the road, bring them back to us. But it's not a direct, hardly ever a direct transition from an internship then into a regular position. What sort of opportunities are available in the P2P3 level for expatriates as an American? Well, we do not recruit according to nationality. So if you apply for a P2 or P3 level, it's usually expected that you will go on mission at some point, even if you are American, US national, and you apply for a position in New York, you can do that. But at some point you will be expected to go out to the field. So there are opportunities coming up regularly at P2, P3 level. I have the list of some of the positions. Currently there is right now, we don't have a P2 position advertised. We do have a P3 position advertised in Kenya, in Nairobi. This is a specialized post in the area of staff counseling, but there might be many other positions. We do actually have also other specialists in nutrition at the P3 level, budget manager at the P3 level. So there are positions out there at P3 level. P2 comes in a little bit less regularly, but they occur as well. So you need to watch out for them. You can do a RSS feed. That means an automatic feed to your email address, and you can define the criteria of the positions that you are looking for. So this would avoid you to go back onto to our website all the time to check, but you can make sure that positions in a special area, be it, for instance, finance and management or nutrition or whatever, that these positions are sent to you into your email, through email into your inbox, and you can check. So this is one way. You can define the level as well. You can say, well, I would like to see all the P2 positions that come up, and you will get that feed into your email. Okay, for the JPO program, what's it again? I think the question was, can we apply anytime? Here it is. Or do we have to wait for job posting? Also, so this is from a Canadian national. So the JPO programs are usually announced through the national program. So if you're Canadian, you would have to check on the Canadian governmental site. I would expect them to announce that there. They might have a special site as well. We do have on our website information on the JPO program that I think we have the links there to the countries, or at least we state the countries that sponsor JPOs with UNICEF. So you can find out if your country is among the sponsoring countries, and you get more information on our website on how the process works. But usually these countries go out with petitions or with a call for applicants to come forward in a given time frame. That can vary from one country to another. Okay, here's an interesting question also on consultants. What criteria do we use by hiring consultants? And that really is something, it depends on the consultancy. The consultancy, we do distinguish two types of consultancy, if you wish. The consultant who is an expert, who has a specific, highly specialized knowledge, which we do not have internally. And we need that person or that knowledge temporarily, or can be a research, can be a specific project, can be a conference. It's usually on a short time frame. But there is also consultants that we take on a little bit longer perspective, 3 to 6 months, or even sometimes a little bit more, where we are short of knowledge, short of staff for a limited period of time, and that can actually sometimes lead to hiring consultants for that time period on a type of activity which is there is special knowledge needed, but it's not necessarily the specialist that we need in there. We call these type of contracts and individual contractors. Now, you mentioned in your question also what about the cultural sensitivities in hiring consultants that, presumably then go abroad and work internationally. Well, this is part of what we would check when we hire a consultant. But again, this is not something the hiring of consultants is really done completely decentralized. It's not something where you go through a very highly formalized recruitment process. The requirements are that the process needs to be competitive, and we usually would ask for a pricing as well. So it's often lump sums that are paid there. It's a special price ticket for that competency for a given time frame, and we would obviously try to get the best value for our money as well. So local knowledge might be very important, depending again on the consultancy and on the terms of references. So what are the key skills essential for fundraising? Fundraising is an area where we have recruited and where we recruit regularly. We have often made the experience that in fundraising, the key competency actually cannot be described with a specific academic background or specific training. It is really the experience on the job as a fundraiser. So fundraising is special in that sense that it doesn't go into a specific academic area, but it is the experience that you have done this kind of activity, this kind of job before in another organization. And that can be, that doesn't necessarily, and most of the time actually is not a UN organization, but rather another organization, not-for-profit organization, often around the world. Okay, so I have a question here around consultancies as well. Someone who has quite some experience internationally and nationally in water and sanitation, and would like to know how to get into consultancies in that area. I think it is something where you can go on our website and check out the openings when we look for consultancies in that area and apply through that. But there is also quite regularly, at least once a year, in that particular area, water and sanitation, we go out and look for people who are willing for short-term assignments, and we do have a kind of a roster similar to the talent group that I described before in that area. So you might just not have applied or looked at the right moment. You mentioned you have tried once. I would like to use that example as well to highlight it. You probably need to try quite a number of times. Don't expect that an application will be successful the first time round. Might take more time, and even if you to get onto a roster of consultants, you might have to try several times to make yourself known. But I can only encourage you to continue to look out for suitable either vacancies or call for applications for consultancies, and go for it. Okay, there is a question around communication officers. I think that is something you would need to do the approach that I described. Maybe you get yourself an RSS feed for all the communication posts, and you start screening. What are the criteria? What are the experience that is looked for in this area? Because again, it can vary from one post to another, and it is important that you get a sense of that and do an objective matching with your experience and your skills. If you feel that there is an overlap, then apply. If you feel there's quite a bit of a gap, I think then probably if you feel there is a gap, you know there are many people applying who have probably a complete match, then it's probably not worthwhile applying. But if you monitor, you might come across a position and an opening in that area where your experience actually matches. So there is discussion is really very lively, and I would actually come to a close here with, with, with my interaction, but I would like to highlight that there are 3 colleagues of mine in the chat room for another 3 hours. They are very well skilled to respond to your questions as well. So I would like to invite you to continue and go into the chat room and ask your questions there. There is also a possibility to leave queries via email on the UNICEF website, unicef.org. That's for later, but for the time being, I would like to maybe guide you towards the chat room to get more information from specific information that you might have for your application. Just having a last look if there is a general question. A last general question that I could take on. I think we covered it mostly. So thank you all for your participation. It was a great pleasure, and well, I actually look forward to having another opportunity to exchange with you and have this interactive virtual career fair. So thanks very much, and well, again, my invitation to you to join us in the chat room. Thanks a lot. All the best.